Welcome to The Explainer. So, when most of us hear the words Les Misérables, what pops into our heads? Probably soaring musicals, right? Or maybe sweeping epic romantic tragedy. But honestly, beneath the surface of all that pop culture perception lies something way sharper. Today, we are diving deep into Victor Hugo's monumental, and I mean literally 1,500 pages monumental, masterpiece to reveal what it really is. It's not just a sad story, it's a surgical dissection of 19th century systemic injustice. Okay, here's our agenda for today. We'll start with number 1, the 19th century pressure cooker. Then, number 2, Hugo's manifesto against misery. Next up, number 3, statutory law versus cosmic grace. And finally, number 4, a modern legacy of injustice. Let's get into it. Section 1, the 19th century pressure cooker, establishing the historical scene. So to really understand this book, you have to realize that post-Napoleonic France was essentially a violent political pendulum. We swung wildly from the restored absolutist Bourbon monarchy back in 1815 over to a revolution that brings in the bourgeois king in 1830 and then crash right into a Republican working-class insurrections. It's actually crucial that we use this history to correct a massive public misconception. The narrative climax of Les Misérables absolutely does not happen during the Grand French Revolution of 1789. Actually, scratch that, people always get that wrong. It zeroes in on the localized 1832 June Rebellion. This was sparked by the death of General Lamarck, who was basically a champion of the underrepresented working classes. So yeah, this was a time of chronic, explosive instability. And feeling all that political chaos was a genuinely severe humanitarian crisis. You had rapid rural migration causing absolutely massive overcrowding in Paris. This left the urban masses completely devoid of basic sanitation or labor protections. I mean, if you were starving, the state had zero safety nets for you, none. Instead, what they had waiting for you were dehumanizing sentences of forced labor if you dared to try and survive through illicit means. It was literally a pressure cooker completely designed to marginalize its most vulnerable people. Moving on to Section 2, Hugo's Manifesto Against Misery, the Structural Crises. Now, operating from 19 long years of political exile, Hugo designed this text not just as, passive mass-market entertainment. No, this was a full-blown socio-philosophical manifesto. He explicitly targeted 3 structural crises: the degradation of man by poverty, the ruin of woman by starvation, and the atrophy of childhood by social darkness. He intended to demonstrate systematically exactly how contemporary laws choked the human soul instead of executing any sort of genuine rehabilitation. Like I said, he wasn't just telling a sad story. The guy was basically filing a formal legal complaint against the entire society of his time. And how exactly did he build that complaint? Well, by seamlessly fusing standard romantic prose with an absolutely astonishing array of technical and historical data. He didn't just give us character narratives. We get incredibly detailed tactical military reporting on the Battle of Waterloo. Instead of just a standard chase scene, we get full-on operational audits of the Parisian sewer infrastructure. He even threw in forensic linguistic studies on street slang, which was known as argot. The sheer, overwhelming structural layout of this text proves that Hugo was running a comprehensive systemic audit of France itself. All right, Section 3, Statutory Law versus Cosmic Grace, the Clash of Systems. 19 years. Just think about that number. Driven by acute starvation just to feed his nieces, an impoverished peasant named Jean Valjean commits a minor theft. He steals a single loaf of bread. And for that, the penal backlash is absolute. Successive escape attempts wind up extending his sentence to a staggering 19 years of forced labor. And even when he's finally given a conditional release, this yellow ex-convict passport ensures he is permanently rejected by society. No one will give him a bed, no one will give him a job. The law simply offers zero flexibility. But then, Valjean encounters a major glitch in this purely punitive system. He's given sanctuary by Bishop Muriel, but, old habits die hard, so he relapses into his survival patterns and steals the bishop's silver. When the police drag Valjean back, the bishop does the unthinkable. He straight up lies to the police, says the silver was a gift, and then hands Valjean even more, his expensive silver candlesticks. The bishop tells him, "Your soul is bought by me. I withdraw it from dark thoughts and the spirit of perdition and give it to God." This radical, targeted act of compassion totally neutralizes his resentment and achieves a moral rehabilitation that 19 grueling years of hard labor completely failed to do. Conversely, we have to track the complete systemic destruction of Fantine. First, she faces an unjust termination from her factory job, which, ironically enough, is at a factory owned by a rehabilitative Valjean operating under a pseudonym. She's fired simply because supervisors discover she has an illegitimate daughter. Pushed entirely out of the formal labor market, she resorts to horrifying extremes just to sustain her child, Cosette. She literally sells her hair and her teeth. Ultimately, she cascades into prostitution and contracts fatal tuberculosis. It is a lethal spiral driven by rigid moralizing and a total structural lack of safety nets. So, this brings us to the core conceptual engine driving the whole text. It's a massive dialectical clash. On one side, we have Inspector Javert. He totally personifies pragmatic statutory justice. He has this absolute unyielding belief in blind legal metrics and pitiless duty. To him, if you break the law once, you are permanently non-compliant. Period. On the other side, we have Jean Valjean, representing the cosmic justice of grace. Valjean is literally living data, proving that targeted compassion and structural forgiveness actually have the power to fundamentally re-engineer human nature. This clash completely boils over at the 1832 barricades. Valjean finds himself in a position where he could easily kill Javert, who's been captured as a spy. But instead, he spares his enemy's life. Following that, he executes this Dantesque feat of physical endurance, carrying his adopted daughter's wounded lover, Marius, for miles through the hazardous sewers of Paris. Later, when Javert finally confronts Valjean, he experiences a total cognitive collapse. His rigid legal worldview simply cannot process this deep moral debt. Confronted with grace that totally breaks his matrix, the system shuts down, and Javert initiates a suicide protocol by plunging into the Seine. And finally, Section 4. A modern legacy of injustice. Contemporary grids. So, Hugo essentially isolated a concept that we can define today as the invisible detention grid. It brilliantly explains how macroeconomic structures and a massive deficit of educational capital create these huge barriers that choke individual output and literally force moral degradation. Think about the cruel tavern keepers, the Thénardiers. They display the absolute moral decay caused by extreme scarcity. Meanwhile, the heroic little street child Gavroche personifies this resilient innocence that is ultimately sacrificed by social abandonment. The grid catches absolutely all of them.
What's wild is how perfectly Hugo's diagnostics mirror our own contemporary debates about urban grids. Today, we're still analyzing the structural failure of prison systems that often operate more as professionalized hubs for recidivism than actual rehabilitation. We're still debating the severe hiring barriers and social credit penalties that target rehabilitated ex-felons. I mean, that's just the modern equivalent of Valjean's yellow passport, right? And we see ongoing, fierce debates regarding selective penal targeting, where minor subsistence violations are heavily punished, while massive white-collar corruption is seemingly just absorbed by the system.
As we close this explainer, we have to ask ourselves a pretty uncomfortable question. Do we still operate within the exact same invisible detention grids that Victor Hugo diagnosed way back in 1862? Looking objectively at our modern penal infrastructure and socioeconomic barriers, are we, right now, executing the very same societal algorithms that crushed Fantine and relentlessly hunted Jean Valjean? It is a profound question, and honestly, the answer might totally change how you view the justice systems we rely on every single day. Thanks for joining me, and as always, keep questioning the data around you.